Paul, it's such a pleasure to work with you and to have you here on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Paul, ASP Isotopes, an isotope enrichment company developing and commercializing isotopes of elements or molecules with low atomic masses. For viewers new to the story, please first introduce us to ASP Isotopes and then give us any important updates and milestones on your company.
Thanks. Yes, ASP Isotopes is a company where we develop and commercialize ways of enriching isotopes that can be used to enable many technologies and industries right now and in the future. We're at a pretty interesting time right now for the isotope industry, in that Russia has been the largest supplier of isotopes to the world. And so we're seeing some supply side issues. A lot of governments and companies are questioning or looking at who they do business with. At the same time, on the demand side, there's a lot of new uses for isotopes emerging right now that will, for new healthcare applications and advanced technologies such as quantum computing, and also green energy, such to allow us to meet climate goals in the future. And there aren't any suppliers of those isotopes. So again, there's a lot of new uses, and we're looking at supplying some of those. At the same time that many of the traditional suppliers are maybe having problems supplying, or as supply side issues. So it's an interesting time in the industry right now. We actually reached a major milestone our company did recently. We actually started our first plant up, which is probably the biggest milestone for any company when they start up. And this plant will enrich carbon-14. And actually, the entire world's supply of carbon-14 used to come from Russia. There isn't any available right now. And so we've been asked by a Canadian company to enrich carbon-14 for them, and they will then sell it to the end market. And so that plant started up recently. It will start by enriching oxygen, then it'll start enriching carbon-14.
Paul, that is very exciting news about the opening of the new plant. Congratulations on that. Paul, last November, ASP Isotopes announced that it had entered into a 25-year supply agreement with the Beijing Research Institute of Chemical Engineering Metallurgy for highly enriched molybdenum 100. That agreement is valued at up to $27 million a year. Give us some more of the highlights of that groundbreaking deal.
Yes, actually the contract's pretty confidential between the two parties. You've kind of summarized it pretty well, but obviously that's the first contract we'd actually signed. And that will, it's a pretty big contract for a company of our size. We intend to start supplying them during 2023. And that'll come from another plant we're constructing in South Africa as well. We have two plants currently under construction. The first, we just actually started up, as I said, for carbon-14. The second is a much larger plant that's capable of enriching things such as molybdenum 100 and silicon-28. And so we'll use that plant to supply the Chinese contract. And we're in discussions with lots of other potential customers too for materials. As I said earlier, there's a real change in world dynamics right now. And so, we actually have interest and demand for probably 4 entire plants of isotopes, which would be fully sold out on day one if we had the option to build them. So that's the kind of interest we've got from other customers. But the Chinese contract was the first one we signed.
Paul, ASP Isotopes has made it clear that of the many potential avenues that it can take with enriched isotopes, molybdenum 100 for the diagnostic imaging market is foremost. That agreement we were talking about with the Beijing Research Institute of Chemical Engineering Metallurgy, which was announced just days after your company went public, underlines this commitment. Give us some background on molybdenum, or Moly 100. Tell us why it is important to diagnostic imaging, and please tell us why diagnostic imaging is important to ASP Isotopes.
Thanks. Yeah. So, so Moly 100 or molybdenum 100 is one of the first isotopes we're looking to sell. But right now, the biggest nuclear imaging contrast media is molybdenum 99, which is about a $3.5 billion market. And it's producing 10 nuclear reactors around the world. And 9 of those 10 reactors are going to shut down between now and the end of the decade, or they're scheduled to shut down between now and the end of the decade. They've reached the end of their useful life. So the world is trying to find a new source of molybdenum 99, which ultimately becomes technetium 99 and is used in the patient. And molybdenum 100 be that alternative. And so we're hoping that the molybdenum 100 we will be able to sell will be able to replace a lot of that molybdenum 99 that's currently used in the marketplace today. Molybdenum 99 also has a 66-hour half-life, so it halves in value every 2.5 days. You can imagine shipping a material around the world that's halving in value every 2.5 days and keeping it on the shelf. Terribly complex supply chain. Molybdenum 100 solves a lot of those problems. We're hoping the market will be excited to see our Molybdenum 100 available.
Paul, thank you for that explanation of Molybdenum 100. Can you give us some background on another important isotope, silicon-28?
Silicon-28 is going to be required to enable a lot of future computer technology, such as quantum computing. What you find is that silicon's got three isotopes, 28, 29, and 30, and the 29 essentially blocks the current or stops the conductivity of the semiconductor. If you remove that 29, your conductivity increases thousands of fold. And so to enable quantum computing, silicon-28 is going to be needed. Now, semiconductor manufacturers use a gas called silane, which is a very light gas, and that cannot be enriched in a traditional centrifuge. It's too light. So other enrichers of isotopes need to increase the mass of their product and then turn it into a finished product at the end. We can just enrich exactly what the customer wants. So it means we can get it much more pure, much more cheaply. And so there's a lot of interest from governments and semiconductor manufacturers about our ability to be able to supply silicon-28. And we're in discussion with quite a few of those companies about a potential, supply of those in future years.
Paul, you've been touching on this in our discussion so far. I want to just delve a little more deeply into the fact that many of those nuclear reactors, those research nuclear reactors, are in China and Russia, and they are slated to be phased out. I want to talk about how you are an environmentally friendly producer of isotopes, and also just explain to us how your company's methods are superior over the current standards.
Yeah, well, superior is quite a big word to use, but different and has advantages, I would say. So first of all, our plants are very quick and cheap to construct. Unlike a big centrifuge, it has a spinning kind of tube. Our tubes are stationary and we spin the gas inside the tube. So there aren't any moving components, makes it much quicker and simpler to build. So it's a very green, environmentally friendly process. There's no waste material. We take a product, then we basically separate one part out of it and we give the rest of it back to the marketplace again. So it's very environmentally, there's no real radioactive waste or anything. It's a very efficient way to find products for the future.
Paul, I think it's fair to say that ASP Isotopes means to be an industry disruptor. However, unlike many industry disruptors, for example, in biotech, in which hundreds of millions of dollars and years of regulatory hurdles are needed to get something up and running, ASP Isotopes requires a much smaller initial investment and shorter timeline. Tell us more about the attractiveness of ASP Isotopes to investors interested in disruptive technologies and companies.
Our scientists have spent about 20 years developing this technology. So while, yes, in other industries, a lot of development work and research work that needs to happen to get something to be able to disrupt an industry, that's already taken place during our company. And now it's about commercializing this technology and bringing it to the market to be able to enrich isotopes that the world needs. And so, a small amount of research is required to modify the design for a particular element or a particular product, but a lot of the research has already taken place. And whether we're a disruptor or not, I don't know. I'm not sure we need to be a disruptor, quite frankly, to be able to find a place in this market. It seems that the market is desperate for new suppliers of isotopes, and we're here ready to help.
Paul, give us the essential value proposition. Why should investors take an interest in ASP Isotopes right now?
Yeah, so listen, the whole industry is at a dynamic point right now. We've got a lot of demand for new isotopes that haven't been produced before. At the same time, the traditional producers of isotopes are either shutting down or we're seeing kind of disruptions. And so the whole industry is in a state of flux, and we're a very nimble company able to respond to that because of the time and speed at which it costs us to build a new centrifuge or a new enrichment facility. So that should hopefully mean our return on capital is very high and we're able to generate a substantial amount of free cash flow from these plants we build. And in my experience, lots of free cash flow means a higher share price.
Sounds good to me, Paul. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you as well. Thank you for having me.